299 and Section 300. Sometimes it is very difficult to understand the difference between these two sections. It is Section 299 says culpable homicide, Section 300 says murder. So, what is culpable homicide? You should understand culpable homicide. Sometimes you should remember this section. Unless you remember this section, it will be difficult on your part while answering a question. What is first you should know what is homicide. Homicide, that is derived from a Latin term, that is homi, that is man, sido, that is cut. Homi, man, sido, that is cut. The homicide, in other words, means the killing of a human being by another human being. Suppose an animal kills a person, it may not be a homicide, because here the homicide killing of a man by one human being. Genitor for the causing, or sometimes the generic term is that causing death of a human being or accelerating the death of a human being by another human being. That is called homicide. Homicide and culpable. Culpable means which is punishable. There may be homicide which is not punishable. For an example, if a child below 7 years causes death of a human being, that is not punishable. Even a human being is killed in the exercise of right of private defense, as per the general exception chapter, then that is not a punishable. So these are not culpable homicide. It may be homicide, but it is not culpable homicide. So here, first you should know how it has been defined. So it is first offense affecting human life, and there's it homicide offense. So this is culpable homicide. Again, Section 299 doesn't prescribe any punishment. Only what it defines, what is culpable homicide. What it says, whoever causes death is caused by doing an act with intention of causing. First you understand. Causes death by doing an act, always intention is there. Intention that somebody will die. He does an act, death is caused. First, unless death is caused, that is not a culpable homicide. Death is caused, human being is killed. Whoever causes death by doing an act with intention of causing death. Then, whoever causes death with the intention of causing death or with the intention of causing such bodily injury as is likely to cause. In all cases, there must be a death. Who causes death? By doing an act, with the intention of causing such bodily injury, with the intention of causing death, or whoever causes death with the intention of causing such bodily injury as is likely to cause. Second, whoever causes death with the knowledge that he is likely, by doing an act, always by doing an act, by doing an act, with the knowledge that he is likely by such act to cause death, that commits the offense of culpable homicide. So, if your illustration will make it clear that suppose somebody dug a pit, covered that pit with turf or some stick, with intention that whoever will pass on that pit, believing that the soil is strong, soil is firm, he will fall in the pit and die. So then, that is if somebody just walked on that pit or turf, believing that the ground is firm and he fell in the pit and died. That will be treated as culpable homicide. So illustration will make it clear. He lay its sticks and toss over a pit with the intention of thereby causing death. What is that intention? Death will be caused. But here his intention is not there to cause death of a particular person. The only intention is causing death. Or with the knowledge that death is likely to be thereby caused. Or the knowledge that by knowledge that death is likely to be caused by such act. Here, his intention is not to cause somebody's death, a particular person's death. Jade believing the ground, Jade is had no intention to cause Jade's death. Jade believing the ground to be far, treats on it, falls it, and is killed. He has committed the offense of culpability. Can be illustration. A knows Jade to be behind a bush. He is aware that Jade is behind a bush. B does not know it. A, intending to cause or knowing it to be likely to cause Jade's death, he are not intending those. To get this or maybe likely to cause death, induces B to fire at the bush. B fires and kills Jade. Here, B may be guilty of offense, but J had committed the offense of culpable homicide. Because that is some lesser degree of this is, it is not aggravated type of culpable homicide. That's a culpable homicide. This is all a culpable homicide. With intent to kill and steal it, kills B, who is behind a bush. They are not knowing that he was there. Here, although he was doing an unlawful act, he was not guilty of culpable homicide, as he did not intend to kill B or to cause death by doing an act that he knew was likely to cause death, because his intention was to steal the fowl or firing to shoot at a fowl. So here, this is all culpable homicide. This was did not come intend to kill me or cause death by doing an act. He is not guilty. He was doing an unlawful act. He was not guilty of culpable homicide. The explanation 1, 2, 3. Again, why the explanation is given to a section? Explanation is given because for further clarification. What he says, a person who causes bodily injury to another, who is laboring under a disorder, disease, or bodily infirmity, who are suffering from, there is a disorder, and then accelerates the death of that other, shall be deemed to have caused his death. This suppose A caused some injury to B, who had undergone an operation in her belly. So there he accelerated that, so that will be treated as a deed that he has caused that. This expansion. Expansion 2 says, where death is caused by bodily injury, the person who causes certain injury shall be deemed to have caused the death, although he would have been saved if proper medical treatment would have been. This expansion 2 says, deeming provision to deem. If a person where the death is caused by bodily injury, that is a bodily injury, thereby death was caused, the person who causes such bodily injury shall be deemed to have caused the death, although by resorting to proper remedies and skillful treatment, the death might have been prevented. This expansion clarifies. Expansion 3 says, the causing of the death of a child inside the mother womb is not culpable homicide, but if any part of that child comes out from the mother's womb, then that will be treated as culpable homicide. What it says, the causing of the death of a child in the mother's womb is not homicide. It is not homicide, but it may amount to culpable homicide to cause the death of a living child if any part of that child has been brought forth, though the child may not have breathed or been completely. Even a dead child inside if the child was dead inside the mother womb, in the mother womb, but by by doing an act of a person or by causing such injury to that woman, if any part of the child's body, even a finger comes out, then that will also be treated as this culpable homicide. So now, what is murder? Sometimes we also get a question, what is the difference between culpable homicide and murder? It is not the proper question. The question should be, what is when culpable homicide becomes murder and when culpable homicide is not murder. Culpable homicide not amount to murder and culpable homicide which amounts to murder. Culpable homicide is a genus and murder is a species. All murders are culpable homicides, but all culpable homicides are not. Once a culpable homicide becomes murder, if that is committed in the circumstances as provided in Section 300. What Section 300 says? In other words, it is very difficult to give a clear definition of murder. Culpable homicide amounts to murder in some cases, but culpable homicide will not be a murder in some cases. In other words, the famous case, that is the leading case in the matter, is R versus Ruby. That is in the 1876, the Privy Council has settled the law. And that is what is culpable homicide amounting to murder, and when that will be treated as culpable homicide, not a murder.
Sir,
in that case,
repeat the case
the facts
name?
of the case were that the one woman, the husband, because of anger, dealt some blows on the chest of the woman, and also just caused some injury on the chest of the woman, and the woman died. Then the Privy Council said that is not a murder, because the husband had no intention that such injury was sufficient to cause death. So that is if you go through that decision, R versus Govinda, you will be clarified. What is when culpable homicide becomes? In other words, culpable homicide is an aggravated form of murder. Murder is an aggravated form of culpable homicide. Aggravated, the facts and circumstances of each case is to be considered separately to find out whether that is murder, culpable homicide amount to murder, or culpable homicide not amount to. If you check things, this murder is aggravated form of culpable homicide. So what he says? That is murder. What is except in the cases hereinafter accepted? Culpable homicide is murder. If the act by which death is caused is done with the intention of causing death, there are two intentions here. It says if the act by which the death is caused is done with intention of causing death. First, you should know culpable homicide. Culpable homicide is murder. That amounts to murder. If the act by which the death is caused, two intentions is there. First, in culpable homicide there is intention of causing death, and the act by which the death is caused is done with the intention of causing death of the person. In other words, that is that by which first you should apply culpable homicide. That is, whoever causes death by doing an act with intention of causing death, and again the act which was caused, that was done with intention of causing. Sometimes it overlaps. It is very difficult to understand. Causing by does an act with intention of causing death, but here again, if the act by which the death is caused is done with the intention of causing death, sometimes you think in the similar thing. Why? That is again mentioned. Whoever causes death by doing an act with intention of causing death. Then again says, if that act is done with if the act by which death is caused, that is done with intention of causing death. With intention of causing death. That is murder. That is, in such case, culpable homicide becomes murder. Second, if culpable homicide is murder, if it is done with the intention of causing such bodily injury as the offender knows to be likely to cause the death of the person to whom the harm is caused. Such bodily injury, it is called culpable homicide is murder. Is other parts are easy to differentiate. We understand. The culpable homicide is murder if it is done with the intention of causing such bodily injury, as the offender knows, that is not in the culpable homicide, as the offender knows to be likely to cause the death of the person to whom the harm is caused. Then that becomes, such type of culpable homicide becomes murder. Thirdly, culpable homicide is murder if it is done with the intention of causing bodily injury to any person and the bodily injury intended to be inflicted sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. This is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. Then, but culpable homicide is murder if it is done with the intention of causing bodily injury. Culpable homicide, that is, death is caused. It is done with the intention of causing bodily injury to any person. We are not putting to any person. And the bodily injury intended to be inflicted is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. Fourthly, culpable homicide is murder if the person committing the act knows that it is so imminently dangerous that it must in all probability cause death or such bodily injury as is likely to cause death, and commit such act without an excuse for incurring the risk of causing death. Commit such act without the excuse of incurring the risk of causing death or such injury as aforesaid. These are, in such cases, culpable homicide becomes murder. First, you see, illustration A shoots Z with the intention of killing him. Here, by doing whoever causes death, by doing an act with intention of causing death, that is satisfied. Again, culpable homicide is murder if the act by which death is caused is done with intention of causing death. Intention of causing somebody's death. That is, E shoots J with the intention of killing him. So J dies, in consequence A commits murder. This is first illustration to A. Second, A knowing that Z is laboring under such a disease that a blow is likely to cause his death, strikes him with the intention of causing bodily injury. Then J dies in consequence of the blow. He is guilty of murder, although the blow might not have been sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause the death of a person in a sound state of health. But if A, not knowing that Z is laboring under any disease, gives him such a blow as would not in the ordinary course of nature kill a person in sound state of health, here A, although he may intend to cause bodily injury, is not guilty of murder. If he did not intend to cause death or such bodily injury as in the ordinary course of nature would cause his death. That is, what if it is done with the intention of causing such bodily injury as the offender knows to be likely to cause the death of the person to whom the harm is caused. That is first illustration B. C. A intentionally gives Z a sword cut or club wound sufficient to cause the death of a man in the ordinary course of nature. J dies in consequence here. A is guilty of murder, although he may not have intended to cause Z's death. A, without an excuse, fired at a mouth. Fired loaded cannon into a crowd of persons and kills one of them. Here is fourthly, if the person committing the act knows that it is so eminently dangerous that it must in all probably cause the death or such bodily injury as is likely to cause death. So that's why he commits murder. Suppose somebody had to a mob, had pointing a mob. He knows, the person committing that knows that it is so imminently near that in all probably it will cause death. Or any injury is got that will cause death. In the such bodily injury likely to cause death. Here he commits this culprit, but that is murder. So this is, there are, that is, three exceptions in which case culpable homicide will not be murder if that will be murder as per the definition of section 300. What are those? When culpable homicide is not murder. That is, culpable homicide is not murder if the offender was deprived of the power of self-control. Deprived of the power of self-control. How? By grief and sudden provocation. Culpable homicide will not be murder if a person, no, it will be murder, but if the human being was killed, that may causes death of a human being due to was deprived of the power of self-control by grave and severe sudden provocation. Causes the death of the person to who gave the provocation. If a person provokes somebody, and if a person, if the accused being deprived of the power of self-control due to greed and sudden provocation, causes the death of the person who gave that provocation. The death of any person or causes the death of any person by mistake or accident. That will not be treated as murder. The above exception is subject to following proviso. First, what are those provisos? That is, first, that the provocation is not sought or voluntarily provoked by the offender. First, suppose the person offender, he first interfered and thereafter somebody provoked him. So in such case, that will be treated as murder. First, that the provocation is not sought or voluntarily provoked by the offender as an excuse for killing or doing harm to any person. The offender voluntarily sought for, voluntarily provoked another, and thereby because of the act of another he lost his self-control and due to grave and sudden provocation caused the death of that person. Secondly, that the provocation is not given by anything done in the obedience to it. Suppose public servant who is exercising the public duty did something and that provoked that man, and because of this sudden provocation he kills, that will also be treated as a murder, because that the provocation is not given by anything done in obedience to the law or by a public servant in the lawful exercise a person of such public service. Thirdly, that the provocation is not given by anything done in the lawful exercise of right of defense. While lawful exercise of right of defense, if somebody was provoked, lost his power of self-control, and due to sudden grave and sudden provocation causes death of that person, so that will be treated as for this explanation. Whether the provocation was grave and sudden enough to prevent the offense from amounting to murder is a question of fact. Illustration, you now go through the illustration. A, under the influence of passion, excited by a provocation given by J, intentionally kills Y, Z's child, Y, Z's child. This is murder, inasmuch as the provocation was not given by the child. Child had not provoked, and the death of the child was not caused by accident. That the death of the, suppose A, because of provocation given by Z, causes death of Z's child. Here that will be treated as murder, because the child had not provoked, or by accident or by mistake, he did not cause the death of that child. The Y gives grave and sudden provocation to A. A, on the provocation, fires a pistol at Y, neither intending nor knowing himself to be likely to kill Z, who is near him, but out of sight, A kills Z. Here, A has not committed murder, but it is mere culpable homicide. A is lawfully arrested by Z. A lawfully arrested Z, a value, that is court triumph. A is excited to sudden and great provocation by the arrest and kills Z. This is murder, inasmuch as provocation was given by a thing done by a public servant in the exercise of his powers. A appears as a witness before Z, a magistrate. Z says that he does not believe a word of A's deposition. There the magistrate told that he doesn't believe a word of A's deposition, and that A has perjured himself. A is moved by sudden passion by the words and kills Z, the magistrate. This is murder. A attempts to pull Z's nose. It is very important. A attempts to pull Z's nose. Z, in the exercise of the right of private defense, lays hold of A to prevent him from doing so. A is moved to sudden violent passion, inconsequence, and kills Z. This is murder, inasmuch as the provocation was given by a thing done in the exercise of the right of private by action. Z strikes B. B is by this provocation excited to violent rage. A bystander, intending to take advantage of B's rage and to cause him to kill Z, puts a knife into B's hand for that purpose. B kills Z with the knife. Here B may have committed only culpable homicide, but A is guilty of murder. That is, he abetted. Now, second exception. First, culpable homicide will not be murder if by being deprived of self-control by grievance or the provocation if somebody causes death. Second exception. There are 5 exceptions to it. Second exception. Culpable homicide is not murder if the offender in the exercising good faith of the right of private defense of person or property. If the offender, while exercising his right of private defense of person or property, exceeded the power given by him by law, exceeded that power of right of private defense and causes the death of the person against whom he is exercising such right of private defense without premeditation. Again, without premeditation and without any intention, previous enmity, etc. Intention of doing more harm that is necessary for the purpose of such defense. That will not be treated as murder, but it will be treated as culpable homicide, not amounting murder. Illustration: Z attempts to pursue A, not in such a manner as to cause grievous hurt to A. A draws out a pistol. Z persists in the assault. A, believing in good faith that he can by no other means prevent himself from being pursued, shoots Z dead. He has not committed murder, but only culpable. Exceeding the right of private defense. If a person causes the death of a person, but that will not be treated as murder. But that must be without premeditation, that is, without any intention. So third is, this is second expansion. Third expansion, culpable homicide is not murder if the offender, being a public servant or aiding a public servant, acting for the advancement of public justice, exceed the power given to him. That means the offender, who is a public servant, or if a person who is the outsider, while aiding a public servant, acting for the advancement of public justice, exceed the power given to him by law, and causes death by doing an act which he, in good faith is very important, believes to be lawfully and necessary for the discharge of his good faith, believes that such act will be done, while believing that he is lawfully empowered to exercise such thing. In good faith, believed to have lawfully and necessary for the due discharge of his duty as such public servant, and without ill will to have the person whose death is caused. Without ill will, without intention, without premeditation, always it is that. That is a public servant while exercising his right. What is? For the advancement of only public justice, only. So if this exception 3 may be taken in many cases like custodial death. No, this will not be applicable. Because this is will not, culpable homicide will not be murder if the offender being a public servant or being a public servant acting for the advancement of public justice. As far he exceed the power given to him. Some power is given to him for public justice. He exceeds that power to given to by law and causes death by doing an act which in good faith believes to be lawful and necessary for the discharge of his duties. And thereby causes the death of a person. As such, the public servant, and without ill will or ill towards the person whose death is caused. Fourth is, culpable homicide is not murder if it is committed without premeditation in a sudden fight. What is premeditation? Suppose two persons who are not previously known, suddenly for this small matter they fought, and while fighting, one of the person died. So that will not be treated as murder. What he says? Culpable homicide is not murder if it is committed without premeditation in a sudden fight, in the heat of passion. That fight must be in the heat of passion upon a sudden quarrel. Heat of passion on a sudden quarrel. And without the offenders having taken undue advantage or acted in cruel or unusual manner. Suppose in fighting, because of fighting, somebody uses acted in a cruel manner, or suppose oath is made with an intention, that is cruel manner. So undue advantage, offender having taken undue advantage and acted in a cruel manner caused the death. Explanation 5. It is immaterial in such case which party offer the provocation or commit the first action because of sudden fight. That is sudden quarrel and without offenders having taken undue advantage. That is sudden fight in the heat of passion upon a sudden quarrel. You should remember. Sudden fight in the heat of passion of a sudden quarrel. If somebody causes death without taking any undue advantage or acted in a cruel manner or in unusual manner, then that will not be treated as murder. 5 exception. Culpable homicide is not murder when the person whose death is caused, being above the age of 18 years, suffers death or takes the risk of death with his own consent. If a boy who is more than 18 years, he consented, because of his own consent, he suffered death, that will not be, that culpable homicide will not be murder. To try to understand what is culpable homicide, when culpable homicide becomes murder, and though culpable homicide is murder in those 5 cases, 5 exceptions, that will be treated as culpable homicide, not amounting to murder. So, that is illustration will be given A by instigation. Voluntarily causes death, a person under 18 years of age to commit suicide. Here, on account of Z's youth, he was incapable of giving consent to his own death. He was therefore abated murder. This is a very important provision. Section 300 and Section 299. These two definitions when culpable homicide and what is murder. So if a question comes, what is the difference between culpable homicide and murder? That's not the correct question. Rather, the question would be, in which case, what is culpable homicide in amount to murder and what is culpable homicide not amount? What is culpable homicide? When culpable homicide amounts to murder, or when culpable homicide will not be treated as murder. So here, it is sometimes the difference is very thin. If such a question is put, you may answer, because in all murder, culpable homicide is there. But all culpable homicides are not. Culpable homicides becomes murder in four circumstances. In four circumstances, as I discussed earlier, that is, if the act by which death is caused is done with intention of causing death. Second, that culpable homicide is murder if it is done with intention of causing such bodily injury as the offender knows to be likely to cause the death of the person to whom the harm is made. Offender knows that it will cause the death of the person to whom the harm is made. Thirdly, culpable homicide is murder if it is done with intention of causing bodily injury to any person, and the bodily injury intended to be inflicted is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. That is murder. Fourthly, if the culpable homicide is murder, if the person committing the act knows that it is so imminently dangerous that it must, in all probability, cause death, or so imminently dangerous that it must, that all probability such cause death, or such bodily injury, that such bodily injury as to likely to cause death, and commit such acts without an excuse for incurring the risk of causing death or such injury as aforesaid. This is very important. Then five exceptions are there. Hereinafter excepted, because section 300 begins with the sentence, except in the cases hereinafter excepted, culpable homicide is not. So what are those exceptions? First exception,